Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the workshop. It is an absolute thrill to have you back because today is part 3 of working on Gendry'S Warhammer from Game of Thrones. It's going to be a massive amount of fun and I really hope you enjoy this episode. But first things first, a little bit of TIG welding practice. Oh, how I do enjoy getting my practice on, and now what we're going to do is we're going to get back to work on the project at hand. I'm going to take a wire wheel and a cut brush, and we are going to polish this up. We're obviously not going to be going down to true surface, true metal, but we're going to be polishing up the surface, which is scale right now, and then of course we can oil it, and it's just going to look beautiful. It's going to look so nice. So now it's on to a little bit of wire wheeling.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Shiny that thing is. Isn't this thing just looking beautiful? I'm very pleased with how this thing is turning out there. So what we're now going to do is I'm just going to take some linseed oil and give it a little coating. This will help kind of protect it, save it from rusting, and of course it's also just going to help make it pop. And it just leaves a really beautiful and aesthetically pleasing finish on there. So now that we've got this wire wheeled up and oiled up and it's looking spectacular, we're now going to work on some of the other fittings on this piece. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take some steel from this bucket here and we're going to be throwing it in the lathe. So now that Warhammer is now nicely oiled up, looking fantastic, pretending this is the Warhammer, I want to make myself a cap that's going to go here on this end, at this end of the handle, a socket that's going to go between the head of the hammer and the handle, and a socket that's going to go on the far end of the handle too. The cap and the socket over here can have some nice finials, and I'm actually, having said that, I'm not sure about the socket right here. We'll see how it looks first with just the two ends. So I need to make sure that my cap here at the end of the handle is at least 42.02 millimeters. So I have this piece of 45 mil round bar. That piece is a little rusty actually. So now into the vise we go. The vise? The chuck. Goodness gracious, you can tell I'm not a machinist. So I don't need too much sticking out of there. I reckon that'll probably do. So I'll tighten all three. Watch what sits on the doodah. There we go, get a little more tightness. One more should do it. Change the tooling over. And I dare say we're ready to do a little bit of lathing. So first things first, I'm just going to face off this front edge a little bit. So what I'm now going to do is I'm just going to come in just ever so slightly. We're going to take some off the diameter here. That way I've got something that, a known dimension to work to that I can plug into the DRO. 43.83. I'll then come onto the DRO here, plug that in, and perfect. Now I know that, okay, we've got 43.83 on the diameter. This DRO here is set up to read me the diameter, so it's not actually reading how far in we're physically going with this tool, but it's actually reading how much we're taking off the overall diameter. So it's reading twice the radius. Obviously we're controlling the radius with this axis here, and we're controlling the diameter, and well, knowing the diameter with this. In we go just a little bit. We're going to take, about kind of 3/16 an inch off diameter. So what we're now going to do, okay, this entire assembly here can swivel. I don't know what you call this. Like I said, I'm not a machinist, but this feeds in this way. I have a tapering attachment on this machine, but it won't do very drastic tapers. In case any of you are interested, because I used it in a couple other videos, it's this thing here. There's a little gripping tool that grips onto the ways of the lathe, and then this gets held, and then the carriage moves, and it'll slide it back and forth. But for a very, very kind of obtuse taper, as I want to do here, we're going to put a little point on there. That doesn't do a big enough angle. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to loosen up these bolts here, and we're going to pivot this around so that I can make the taper by feeding this in and out while it's at an angle. That's now loose. We'll pivot that, get a rough kind of idea of the angle that we want. A little too obtuse. Let's pivot some more. Okay, I think that's probably about close enough. We'll now tighten it up. I'm also going to loosen up this tool post holder. Is that what they're called? I don't know. Jenny, is that what they're called?
Yes.
Yeah, it is? Okay, good. Thanks for letting me know, dude. God, videographers that know about lathe turning, isn't it handy? What are your views on carbide versus high-speed steel, Jamie?
So the high-speed steel is probably a bit more shiny.
How did you know that? Righty-ho, let's see if this works. So what I'll do here is I'll just take little bites, feeding in with this thing Madhu here, and obviously controlling our travel across the workpiece here. So I'm just coming into the center of the workpiece here, and we're going to take the last cut that this thing should really need. Gently feed her up. It's looking great, and it looks like I guesstimated the angle pretty nice and close. This is going to be a very nice looking point. Now, this is the only real kind of tool that I have for this. And now I need to have a think about how I'm going to use this particular shaped insert to create some interesting shapes and radii in here. What I want to do, I think, is I want to push a little down into here, create a little bit of a hollow, and then kind of radius and arc that out as we come to a lip here that's then going to round back over. This is not the tool for it, but we might just about be able to make this work. I'm going to turn it on. We're going to dig in slightly with this. We're going to engage the power feed going in this direction. I've got it set nice and slow, and then I'm going to go further in and then bring it out, and hopefully that'll give us a little bit of a radius. We'll see how it goes. If it doesn't work, then it's all right. We've got plenty more steel, plenty more things to learn, and it'll be fun no matter what. Look at how cool this looks. This is so... That was a lot of fun to try. Now, I'm a little upset about... I'm not upset, for goodness sake. This is... I'm still ecstatic, but I'm a little sad, maybe that'll work, that the surface finish is very, very rough. And the reason being, me being sad, is because I have absolutely no idea how I'm going to get this to look clean. Okay, so I think we got that squared up again. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to put this as a parting off tool, I think. Is that what they're called? Somebody let me know. And what we're going to do is I'm going to make sure that it's at the right height. And now what we'll do, we'll go ahead and turn on the lathe, and it's making a waterfall on us. And again. Here we go. And it's still making a waterfall. Oh well, I've given up worrying about it. So I'll engage the power feed, and we'll begin cutting. So here's that piece. It's now been cut off. I'm going to be ready to flip that around. But first, I think we're going to eat lunch. As far as I know, Chef Sam has been busy working away, kind of sorting that. What are you up to, Sam?
Well, seeing as you two are complete non-domesticated, I can't even start lunch yet. I've got all the washing up to do. But I bought this dish rack. I'm just going to put this dish rack together, and we can get cooking.
Whoa! How do you do that, Sam?
Magic. Now I've got to do the washing up before I can do any cooking.
It doesn't particularly seem as if food is ready, so we will continue cracking on here at the lathe. So we'll pull this out of there, and we can now take this piece and we can poke it back in. We are going to take some parallels and we're going to slip those in there so that we can make sure that it is square with the chuck. Damn it. Okay, and now of course I'm not going to turn the lathe on with the parallels behind it, so I will... That pushed out with some force. Push out the parallels. There we go, and now it should be safe enough to go. I'm going to make sure I don't take any super heavy cuts, because I don't want this to come flying out of the lathe. There isn't a hell of a lot of contact, but this should be good enough to certainly do most of the turning that we've got to do right now. Oh my goodness, that looks delicious. What is that?
Meatballs, sausages, bacon, peppers, tomatoes.
Everything.
Everything.
All of the best foods.
Everything left in the fridge.
Great cooking, Sam. It's time for us to get back to work. Here we go. So now that this piece has been turned, you'll notice I haven't I have not threaded this back end here. I'm going to in the future, but this we're gonna get at the finish on it. We're gonna start the finish on it by heating it up in the forge. Before I do that, I'm gonna run into the grinding room and we're gonna take off that sharp edge there so that it'll radius down and come around nicely as that transitions into the sledgehammer itself. What we will be doing later on today is that we're gonna be giving this the beginning of its patina by putting it in the forge now and oxidizing it, getting a scale finish on it. I don't want to have the threads on there before I do that, otherwise the threads are going to get really chewed up because it's going to need some heavy scale to fill in the tooling marks and make it still look nice. So now, as I mentioned earlier, I want to have a little bit of a collar here coming onto the shaft of the handle, and we're going to turn that on the lathe, taking a piece of 55mm round steel. We're going to chuck it up and then we're going to drill a hole and then use this boring bar to really open up that hole as wide as it can be. Now, I also want this hole to be tapered, and thankfully, of course, I have the tapering attachment on the lathe, and so I'll be able to taper the inside of the hole as well as the material on the outside of the hole relatively easily. Ugly, so we have a 25mm hole going all the way through that piece. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to go and throw this in the fire and let it heat up. This is another piece of 45mm round. We're going to run over to the Hinler power hammer. We're going to use these V dies. Do much the same as what we did on the actual forging of the hammer itself. I'm going to work in there nice and tight. That's going to create a very short taper. From behind of that, we're then going to take some smaller fullering dies and we're going to pinch in and make it octagon. The first taper is going to be round, then behind it we're going to make it octagon. And I really think that's going to fit with these aesthetics here, where we have the octagon trough lines, a round taper. We're going to have that at the bottom end of the handle. I think that's going to make it look really, really nice. Into the fire we go. Okay, so I'll start off nice and gentle here, and I'm just going to gently roll this thing around. There we go, nice. Okay, I'm gonna quickly change these dies over to those little fullering dies I was talking about earlier. Great, that piece should be hot. We can now bring it out of the fire and do a little more forging. Oakley dokley. So now we're gonna give it a little bit of a brush here with the wire brush to get the bulk of the scale off, and it'll save there being too much crusty stuff on the surface. Oh man, this piece is going to be a really nice feature on this. So I'm going to let this cool down, and then we're going to throw this in the lathe. But we still do have more work to do on the previous project in the lathe. So let's go back to that. First things first, what I'm actually going to do is we're going to put this in the fire, and we're going to let it oxidize, get a nice oxidized finish on it. Okay, so we're back at the lathe, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to first focus on the inside diameter. I think that seems like an appropriate thing to do. I think that there's a kind of zero-sum game whichever way I do it. So I'm going to take a boring bar here. We're going to square that up. We're going to give it a little bit of a tighten there, make sure that it's nice and solid. And so this is another piece of insert tooling. So it has these little carbide inserts, just like what I usually turn with, and the carbide, obviously, it cuts well. It does a good job. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come across and we're going to start working on the inside diameter of the workpiece. We're going to rough it out just straight across, and then once we're a little closer to dimension, I'm going to go ahead and set up the taper attachment, and we're going to make the inside taper. We'll then make the exact same taper on the outside, and that'll make our collar. Okay, I've now got the taper attachment set up. I have my angle set 1.96 degrees. This means that as I move the carriage this way, it is naturally going to be going in at the correct amount to be able to get the taper that we need on the inside and on the outside. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you have enjoyed. Please do make sure if you're watching in the future that you watch the next episode. There's going to be a link to that right here. Also, make sure that you watch part 1 if you haven't. That is right there. Subscribe if you're new. Please, I'd love it if you'd share these videos with your friends. And of course, most of all, I hope you have a fantastic day. I'll be seeing you tomorrow on the next episode. Lots of great stuff to come. Bye-bye.